Okay, this is lesson 1, part 4. We are talking about writing objective test items, and you find this handout in your notes under the course documents. So writing objective test items typically consist of written response, completion and short answer, and selected response, which are alternate, like matching, multiple choice, true, false, those kind of things where you provide them answers to choose from. Constructed response is where they have to construct them on their own. There are 4 types of objective test items: true, false, matching, multiple choice, and completion. I would not actually categorize completion in with that. Completion to me is fill in the blank, and if you don't provide them an accommodation an accommodation where you give them a test bank, then that's constructed because you don't give them a response to choose from. Okay, the choice of item format is sometimes determined by your instructional objectives. At other times, the advantages and disadvantages of the different formats should influence your choice. Means you should be familiar with the advantages and disadvantages of the different types of test items. True, false requires less time to construct than other objective items, but they are most prone to guessing, like I said in part 3, as well as having a variety of other faults. These include absolutes in wording, double negatives, opinionated and double-barreled statements, excessive wordiness, and a tendency to reflect statements taken verbatim from readings. So somebody might just copy a sentence from a book and put it on and say, is it true or false? Change one word. That's not really trying to figure out if students know anything. Matching items are fairly easy to construct, but then they tend to be subject to certain faults, lack of clarity and specificity in directions, dissimilar and non-ordered list, and reversal of options and descriptions. So a lot of times they get them confused. That's when you have to figure out one correct answer and 3 good distractors. You want those distractors to be related to the topic, but not be so close to the right answer that they can't figure out the difference between the correct answer and an incorrect answer. Multiple choice items are the most difficult to construct. However, higher order multiple choice items lend themselves well to measuring higher level thinking skills. Completion items kind of rival with true, false, and they're easy to construct. They are least subject to guessing, which means because you don't give them anything to guess from. They require more scoring time because you got to figure out if it's the right answer. Are you going to give partial credit for that? Are you going to take off your spelling? Those kind of things. To avoid gender and racial biases in test items, avoid using stereotypes and be sure to make equal reference to both males and females and to various ethnic groups in your questions. Excuse me. The order in which items are placed on the test is important, and there are 3 criteria to consider before determining item order. These criteria include ensuring that the item order does not, 1, contribute to inadvertent test complexity for students taking the test, 2, provide students with unintended clues to the correct answers, and 3, making scoring the test or analyzing students' performance more difficult than necessary. If possible, cluster together items that measure the same enabling skills and instructional objectives. So have all multiple choice together, all matching together, all true false together, all short answer together. Keep them together. Writing the directions for a test. Directions help to clarify for students what they are to do and how to respond or indicate their answer choices. 2 criteria are important for ensuring that directions aid rather than confuse students. I like to always make my directions bold, bigger, or highlight them so that they come back to them if they need that. Order of information. State the skill measured. Describe any resources, materials required to answer the items, like a map, a calculator, paragraphs, a chart, something like that. Describe how the students are how to respond, and then describe any other special things that they may need to complete that test. The overall directions for a test, I like for you to tell them what the test is about, how long they have to take the test, how many points it's going to be worth, and then wish them luck, something good, something positive. And then I like to give each section a set of directions, like multiple choice. How do you want them to respond? The point value. True, false. How do you want them to respond? And the point value. And all of those I would highlight or make bold or bigger. Rating student performance, attitudes, and behavior. You want to analyze your instructional goals that are attitudes. Develop rubrics and evaluation procedures. The rubrics will allow you to be as objective about the process as possible. Describe procedures for rating their behavior, and develop questionnaires to gather students' attitudes and how they feel they did. It's very important that they feel like they're as much a part of the assessment process as possible. That's going to make them feel more comfortable. They're going to be motivated to do their best because they know that you're going to be asking them what they think and how they felt for this. Teachers are often expected to judge students' attitudes and to report these judgments to students as well as parents. One researcher defines attitudes as internal states that influence an individual's choice of personal action. This author suggests that attitudes have three parts, including an affective component, a behavioral component, and a cognitive component. And this goes right into with Bloom's taxonomy. Students' attitudes and behaviors should be rated more than once during a term to ensure the students are assigned reflective, to ensure that the ratings assigned reflect the behavioral patterns and not behavioral related to specific instances that occur near the time of the rating. So what they're saying is, does the behavior happen all the time, or is it a behavior that just happened once? If it's something that happens once, you can let that slide. Everybody has a day. But if it's something that goes on and on, that needs to be journaled, noted, talk to the counselor, those types of things. When you evaluate group performance, you want to describe and distribute test scores. You need to think about general shapes of test score distributions, like what are your shapes going to be if you're looking at the bell curve normal distribution. You got to be able to interpret those scores. You need to think about central tendency, measures of central tendency. What is the average? What is the mean? What is the median? And then using those measures. After you have administered and scored your test, you're ready to evaluate a group's performance. In order to do that, you need to calculate the average. What is the average of your test score so that you can provide that information to your students. The rest of this goes into factors to consider when you are looking at the reasonableness of your measures, the complexity of the task, how difficult is it, what are the achievement characteristics of the group, the quality of instruction, and the quality of the test. It goes on to talk about describing the distribution of test scores and looking some at statistics. You look at raw scores. What is a raw score? A raw score is simply 4 out of 6 or 5 out of 10. Nothing done to it, nothing calculated. If you had a 94 out of 100, it's just a 94. Talk a little bit about the bell curve, knowing, what is a normal distribution? Skewed distributions. Is it skewed to the left? Is it skewed to the right? What that means is if you have a negative skewed data, you're going to have scores that are above the average. If you have a positively skewed data, the majority of those scores are going to be below the mean. Okay? You may have different types of curves. You may have a wide, short one. That would be a heterogeneous. If you have a narrow, tall, that would be a homogeneous. are homogeneous. If you have a narrow tall, and here's the ones, and I don't know if this is on your stuff. Are you there? Are you there? There you go. All right. So you have these three different types. Okay. So you're looking at it backwards from me. You've got the wide and the short. That's heterogeneous performance. This is homogeneous, which is narrow and tall, and you've got narrow and tall, which is homogeneous low performance. Okay, this is the bell curve, this is the negatively skewed, and this is the positively skewed. So that's just a brief, really brief, quick way of looking at some statistics that you might see with standardized test results that you get. When you're looking at standardized test results and standard deviation and all that group performance, you want to be able to describe and compare test results. You want to know what those test results mean, and we'll talk about this some more probably. You want to note any discrepancies between those observed measures and those expected measures. How did they perform? Did they perform? Did they complete that test and they did what you thought they would do or not? You need to look at what the connection is with that. Is there correlation between that? And if not, how can you fix it? You need to try to explain those discrepancies if you find any. And then you need to judge the group's performance as being better than expected, as expected, or lower than expected. And whether it's group performance or individual performance, this all deals with designing those tests and using those tests and how can you assess your students. So that completes lesson 1. Thank you.